Accountability is one of the core values I've been leading with on this channel. Everything we do has the potential to create great benefit and harm, and it's up to us to figure out which is which and to live with the consequences of our actions. In a social setting with no accountability, those willing to abuse others shall do so unchecked. On that note, we come to Thomas Westbrook, more commonly known as Holy Koolaid. Throughout my altercations with Stephen Woodford, aka Rationality rules over his transphobia, Westbrook has been a constant presence. And as I'm about to go on to explain with evidence, far more than Woodford, it's Westbrook who has thoroughly disgraced the secular community for his active defense of transphobic bigots, declaring the well-being of trans people as less valuable than money. He's also played a large part in the death of the atheist community of Austin's community. So let's start with that. For those who don't know, over the past few months there's been a mass exodus of former volunteers from the ACA. Almost all the moderators and hosts left over the ACA's refusal to stand with the trans community in condemning transphobic content creators. Former hosts and volunteers such as Tracy, Jen, Claire, John and Chelsea have each appeared on Kevin Logan's Hangouts to give a first-hand account of their experiences, and many more former volunteers supplied me their testimonies to publish in a video, along with testimonies of former sponsors and service users. And the story they paint is a rather harrowing one. As a response to these first-hand accounts and testimonies from dozens of people, Thomas Westbrook, personal friend of Stephen Woodford, had the following to say on July the 20th. Quote, "People I previously respected have been trash-talking inside the ACA and various other fantastic atheist YouTubers. The amount of hollow vitriolic slander is heartbreaking. Meanwhile, we're fighting to make the world better. Stay the course, y'all. When they go low, we go high." End quote. Which is funny since you say you previously respected them, but respect doesn't involve you, Thomas Westbrook, leading a McCarthy-style trial at the ACA elections to root out those in support of the trans community. Because, make no mistake, that is what Westbrook did. For those of you who don't know, following the fallout of Woodford's appearance on the ACA shows, the ACA board voted to condemn Woodford's transphobic videos as such, only to have the president retract said condemnation and apologise to said transphobic bigot on behalf of the board. No signing off by the board involved. It was a real mess. Then came the annual ACA elections, which honestly were a sham. Do note that the references in the corner are timestamped to where Tracy, Jen, Claire and John discuss what took place at the elections, because I believe making this information accessible is the responsible thing to do. I don't want to imply that this can be found in shows that are measured in hours. I want to show you exactly where this information can be found, so you can go and check it for yourself. So numerous people who had never previously been involved with the ACA signed up, which is fine. However, they appeared with a pre-chosen list of who they were going to elect into board positions and who was going to be ousted. When the board who remained critical of Woodford's actions turned up at the election, they knew what was happening. The climate was pretty hostile. They'd already lost before they even ran. So was it just a quick thing of electing into place people who lacked a desire to uphold accountability? No. What followed was a whipping session led by Westbrook, designed to ensure that anyone at the ACA critical of endorsing transphobic content creators saw what happens to those who did so publicly. The elections were stretched out over 5 hours of brutal interrogation for any of the board members who had signed off on the initial statement condemning Woodford's transphobic hit piece. They were flat out asked whether they supported or had ever supported the original statement, and if they responded yes, they were dragged over the coals for it. If you don't know how this relates to McCarthyism, during the Second Red Scare, in which conservative America attempted to destroy many left-leaning groups including atheists, feminists, civil rights and LGBT+ activists, Senator Joseph McCarthy became synonymous with his $64,000 question. Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party of the United States? This isn't some thumbnail-based fantasy, this actually took place at the ACA elections. Again, nobody thought the board who had been critical of Woodford would remain. So this isn't genuine questioning, this was theatre, this was whipping, this was all done with the sole purpose of making sure that anyone who comes along and notices an issue thinks twice before speaking up. It was, for all intents and purposes, the death of accountability at the ACA. And Thomas Westbrook was the man asking many of those questions. Both John and Tracy have independently confirmed to me that one of the main people rolling out the "do you support the original statement or have you ever supported it" question was Westbrook. So that's what he means by people I previously respected. So remember that. Remember the extent to which Westbrook went to rid the ACA of people supportive of the trans community next time he tries to pull the pumpkin card. And by the way, John informs me that Westbrook only signed up to be a ACA member at that election as well. Again, not inherently a problem, merely something which is worth keeping in mind as he no doubt goes ahead and tries to paint everything he did as something he did to protect his beloved ACA. Not so beloved that he thought to pay the membership fee before it aligned with his self-interest. Speaking of signing up just before the election, Westbrook also played a large part in lying to cover up for fellow YouTuber Drew McCoy, also known as GM Skeptic. Whilst doing some further digging into the connections many of the newly elected board had to transphobe Stephen Woodford, I came across the facts that one of his drinking buddies and personal friends, Drew McCoy, was elected even though he lacks the 6 months membership required by ACA bylaw. The moment I published this knowledge, Westbrook jumped on me, declaring me a liar fabricating accusations. A tweet which appears to have been accepted without scrutiny by his followers. Upon seeing this, the source of my information, John, who was at the time the ACA treasurer and membership chair, gave me permission to name him as my source. By the way, John goes into this in his appearance on Kevin's show, and he didn't just see that McCoy was not on the list and assume no clerical error on his part. He raised the issue at the election, yet was pushed aside by the then president, who claimed he had paid at some point. So John went through every membership receipt he had ever written, checked every digital transaction he'd ever received, and found no evidence of what they claimed. McCoy was not a member until that night, and to drive home the hypocrisy, the year before they had a female member who wanted to run with 4 months membership, which is still 4 more than McCoy. Yet, she was subsequently rejected. Why? Well, only those who violated the ACA bylaws at the 2019 elections can truly tell us that. Now, after I'd publicly shared my source, Westbrook, lacking all integrity, never came out and admitted that he had actively lied to protect his friends, besmirching my reputation in the process. As far as Westbrook's followers are concerned, McCoy's phantom membership is genuine, even though all evidence points to the contrary. So Westbrook is someone who conflates respect with hostility and lies with truth. It's like he swallowed a reverse dictionary, all as a means to protect his inner clique of cis-white YouTube friends. Speaking of which, let's move on to Westbrook asserting that abusing trans people is A-OK, so long as it's part of some unsolicited job interview. For those of you so lucky to not recall Mr. Friedel, he was someone who targeted me because I challenged the claims put out there about myself by Telltale Atheist. Said claims asserted that I had apparently started violence at Faithless Forum 2019. Telltale even went on to equate the level of said violence to that of burning down religious buildings. When asked about it, he said we'd have to wait for the video footage to come out. Said video footage never came out. And whilst he did apologise at one point, in the very same thread he went ahead and declared that he wasn't actually sorry. He just said sorry to move the conversation along, notably as far away from his active lie as possible without any sort of consequence for him. Because Telltale Atheist, along with Westbrook, is one of the official organisers of the Faithless Forum. Mr. Friedel's harassment started on May the 1st and continued for the rest of the month until I blocked him on every social network, during which he notably declared that he'd become more than transphobic because I had the audacity as a trans person to stand up against libelous accusations that claimed I'd started a riot at the Faithless forum, pretty much telling us that he'd always been transphobic and was trying to use my reasonable reaction as an excuse for his pre-existing bigotry. Move on to June the 23rd, and Westbrook is getting rather chummy with Friedel, who has since changed his name and avatar. And this is something Golla's Cranium noted. As a response to this, Westbrook set about his usual dishonest defense, lying about Friedel's character and how prolonged his harassment of me was. He stated, quote, "Actually, he really isn't. I know him personally. You're taking one tweet without context to character assassinate. He made it hyperbolically to make a point about EOT's behaviour and gauge reaction, and he even deleted it and said it doesn't represent his views towards trans people. It's really dangerous to make a sweeping statement about anyone based on one tweet, especially without the bigger picture, context or tone. Do you even know anything about him aside from this one tweet? Or are you just being quick to paint strangers as hateful people? You call me out for calling religious people slow when it's far more complex? Well, I'm calling you out for calling Jonathan hateful. He's just not." End quote. Again, the harassment took place over a month, and I wasn't the one asserting that you lot had instigated violence without evidence. So Westbrook can fuck off if he thinks the one tweet and hyperbole is all that's wrong with Friedel. Also, Friedel disagrees in the very same thread, stating, quote, "That is close. Problem is, there were other tweets going on at the same time. The first trans person I had contact with was EOT, but his followers are those that caused the tweet. I still see most trans people as being gruff and very rude. I have, however, since then, encountered several wonderful trans people. I am still a bit reserved when dealing with trans people, as my experience has been, be prepared to be insulted, not welcomed. I don't care what you think of me, life is nice that way." End quote. And here's a fun thing about this. Westbrook was fully informed that Friedel disagreed with his assertions, yet he still went out of his way to defend him, partaking in active victim blaming, shirking John's responsibility for his own shitty behaviour. No one forced John to make that crap comment to my post addressing Telltale's libelous accusations, so both you can fuck off, you thoroughly dishonest tosser. I mean, you really can't stop lying, can you? Lying in a manner that gives bigots a free pass to continue their bigotry, because, make no mistake, Friedel has continued with his bigotry. Only the other week I found him sharing an anti-trans hit piece designed with the intention to promote the idea that doctors should have the right to deny trans people support in exploring their identity socially in a safe and scientifically supported fashion, effectively arguing that doctors should be allowed to put their own prejudice before the well-being of the children under their care. The article follows all the same patterns of bigotry that they go through when they think they can ignore the consensus. Bigot gets challenged on that professionally. Bigot labels being held to the scientific consensus false allegations. Bigot is found by her overseers to be lacking any such case. Bigot quits out of frustration. Bigot makes unevidenced claims, lying about said consensus and the research available, going so far as to claim it doesn't exist, even though I've routinely covered it on this channel. None of this is new. We saw it, and indeed still do see it, with lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. Every now and then, a conservative person in a position of care tries to deny that care, gets called out on it, and labels any attempts to stick to what we know an oppressive LGBT+ dogma. This is an old record worn thin, and Friedel was playing it as Westbrook excuses its transphobia. Fact is, Westbrook's active dishonesty here isn't what I consider to be the worst thing in this conversation. That will be statements such as these. Quote, "Judging an entire group by one member's actions is an unreasonable position. What I'm saying is that it's not his position. He made that tweet to see how people would respond. He's looking for reasonable people who are effective at changing minds to support financially." End quote. Also, quote, "Not really. He isn't a content creator. He's not shouting hateful things to a crowd of thousands. if he uses his Twitter account to occasionally pose as the other side, as a sort of undercover job interview to gauge reactions of a handful of people, what's wrong with that? End quote. Oh, I don't know. How about this, Westbrook? As a member of a marginalized community with high levels of attempted suicide, I did not sign up to be abused. All it takes is one bigot too many and it's lights out permanently. Thankfully, self-harm hasn't been in my books for a long fucking time. I tend to respond to things that make me feel powerless and wronged with incredible amounts of aggression. Which is not nice, but it's preferable to where the other road leads. I'm still recovering from a triple infection because my immune system has been shot to pieces through the constant stress I've been experiencing. But the fact remains, you didn't know any of this. Friedel didn't know any of this. All you did know is that I am a member of a marginalized community with high levels of attempted suicide, already suffering extortionate levels of transphobic abuse. So you decide to add more. Well, what gave either of you that right? You're fucking lucky I respond to shit like I do. Because if I'd gone the other way, well, I guess my absence would have been much more convenient for yourself and your crew. But could you imagine if Westbrook was walking along and all of a sudden, whack, a professional boxer took a swing and fractured his fucking skull in multiple places? Could you imagine if the boxer then went on to tell the police that he did so to see if Westbrook had a career in professional boxing? How long would that stand? Fact is, that'd be far more legitimate because boxers actually sign up to be punched. As a content creator, I never signed up to be abused. Which tells us a lot about how Westbrook and Friedel see trans lives. That our very existence is centered around taking abuse from cis people and responding to it how the very same cis people believe we should. Because that's the only reason an interviewer would ever test us on that. If they believed it was and should be part of the job. At least with Woodford, he's just dehumanizing an entire demographic, a group, an ambiguous other. You, on the other hand, are attempting to justify abusive behavior towards people you know. That's why, as much as a scumbag as Woodford is, you are worse. Metaphorically speaking, you're not the person pushing the button to blow something up miles away. You're the person who looks us in the eye as you pull the trigger. And Golla's Cranium may have touched upon why. You see, along with you claiming that Friedel donates money to secular content creators as a justification for their transphobic abuse, Friedel went on to disclose that he apparently runs some sort of charity, stating, quote, "I run a charity. We mainly support atheist advancement causes. We do from time to time support LGBT+ causes. I use Twitter, Facebook and YouTube to help find people worth supporting." End quote. And that's when Golla's Cranium started asking the good questions. Namely, what was the name of said charity and who was he currently supporting? Of course, Friedel started to close up at that point. All the while, Westbrook was going out of his way to defend Friedel's transphobic bigotry. So as Golla's Cranium pointed out that it was not simply a single tweet as Westbrook had dishonestly pretended, as he asked what context makes transphobic abuse okay, he also asked whether one of the people Friedel was supporting was Westbrook. Westbrook lost it. He ignored the fact that he'd just been caught out lying there and then and went into a personal attack over Golla's Cranium's question, claiming it was gaslighting even though nowhere did it seek to make Westbrook question his own sanity. He also argued Golla's Cranium was insinuating when no. He was asking a very logical and straight up question. Here is a person you are defending. Both he and you have gone to great lengths to talk about how they sponsor content creators. You are a content creator lying to try and cover their backside. The question asked in that context was entirely fair, without insinuation. And I'd say that your response pretty much confirms what you were afraid the questioning would. Not by any insinuation, but by the evidence of your reaction. I have very little doubt in my mind that if you're not being sponsored by him currently, at one point you were. So I'm going to state what I think about that as someone who has seen the discussion, not to mention received the abuse. You are defending transphobia out of purchased loyalty, and I don't think that's an unreasonable conclusion. But those are the two main points I wanted to lead with. The way Westbrook was at the front of the McCarthy-style whipping show at what was supposed to be the ACA elections, doing everything he could to destroy the actual community that once existed there, and the way Woodford very plainly asserts that abusing marginalised people is okay so long as you have the money that you might potentially donate to them. Like some privileged rich kid trying to justify pissing on a homeless guy because he threw him a tenner afterwards. Both of these things, if the secular community had any sense of accountability, should be career-ending. If you continue to sponsor or collaborate with Westbrook after this, you are part of a social contagion. You are hurting marginalised people by supporting him, period. And I will do everything in my power to fight that and its demonstrable harm. Westbrook not only openly justified abusing marginalised people, he helped murder a once thriving secular community. All to save his cis-white YouTube dude bros from the consequences of their own actions. So that's the heavy and recent shit out of the way. The harm he has caused many at the ACA, and the way he has attempted to justify abusing me on the grounds that it's some twisted job interview, which apparently I have no say in. Because fuck my civil and human rights. That's Westbrook's message, bright and clear. But there are a couple other issues which need covering. Namely Westbrook's unending dishonesty, gaslighting, and yes, I'm using said term correctly, unlike him, and his belief that he owns the time of every trans person. All three of which are covered by a single subject. Now a while back I had a run-in with a rather unpleasant character who pretended to be well versed enough to defend Woodford's transphobia, but excused herself from signing off on the statement condemning transphobia in the secular community, started by Golla's Cranium, on the grounds that she didn't know enough about the topic to support trans rights. Now I called this out directly, and when various people from the Faithless forum came after me over that, I just blocked the lot across all media platforms. I wasn't dealing with a 5-on-1. But later on I mentioned said two-faced nature in a future video which I published during a 14-hour D&D session. Our DM said it would be 4 hours, but they failed to account for the players. During a break, as we entered the 8th hour however, I noticed my Twitter feed blow up as people, most notably Thomas Westbrook, came after me for having the audacity to say a harsh word about said person, amongst which I was accused of removing comments, which by the way, if I had done, I would have admitted to, since I have no problem removing comments. As it stands, to this date, I still haven't read what she said, because, again, I got no time for time wasters. I was just laughing at the fact that I'd blocked her days before this video went out, and these tools were whining about why her comments don't appear. That's what blocking does. But I was more annoyed with the sense of entitlement Westbrook had. Like, I answered him personally or something. So, I sent him the following image. Not as an argument, but as a statement. My time belongs to me. I haven't harmed anyone like Woodford, so feel free to fuck off. Of course, a lot of Westbrook supporters don't get the fact I don't have to respond to every bullshit challenge with a reference response, meaning I had to explain it to them. During which I noted Westbrook should really stop making baseless accusations. He responded with quote, "Baseless accusations? I asked you if you deleted her comment and you straight up admitted to it, fool," end quote, sharing a screenshot in which I stated quote, "The comment wasn't removed. She was blocked several days ago for her disingenuous shit, which I went over in my video. Got no time for time wasters," end quote. That right there, Westbrook trying to present me saying the exact opposite of what he says I said as me saying what he says I said. That is gaslighting. And when I asked whether he had even bothered to read the evidence he forwarded, he just stopped responding to that thread. But being the dishonest piece of shit he is, he couldn't help but parrot his now proven lie on his own Twitter feed, and his audience swallowed it without question. Also, what's up with this whole quote, "thank you for your admission of guilt," end quote crap? And here I thought Woodford was the one apparently on trial. Yet the language Westbrook is using, much like his actions at the ACA elections, seems to paint a very different picture. Another thing that bugs me about this tweet is the whole whining about the style of my response. Meanwhile, he's allowed to say whatever he wants to Godless Cranium for asking a genuine fucking question, not to mention make some really childish remarks about PZ Myers. I'm not saying Thomas can't say shit like this, I'm just saying that if you're going to act offended at my response to your sense of entitlement, namely the fact that my response wasn't mature, don't then make digs about diapers. Then again, I guess you can hardly resist going after PZ Myers. After all, you went to great lengths to cast doubt on numerous accusations as you attempted to protect the ever-noble Lawrence Krauss from the evil Me Too movement. Something PZ Myers tore into. You did this very awkward tap dance in which you stated you, quote, reserve judgment, end quote, all whilst doing everything in your power to cast doubt on the accusations. Such methods include the abuser's favourite, they never did anything inappropriate around me. Then there was the poisoning of the well by targeting two of the sources who are women that have been targets of brutal harassment campaigns online, primarily led by cishet men. You then finished up by bringing up all of Krauss's work, telling us that it doesn't invalidate all of that, as if that was ever the point being made. It just seems intended to glorify Krauss and therefore exonerate him through that. Moving on to the comments shared, Westbrook again tries to hide behind the I've reserved judgment when very clearly he hasn't. He also throws out the anti-Me Too phrase, witch hunt, a laughable accusation considering both his part in the ACA elections and what people such as Rebecca Watson faced, which can genuinely be viewed as a witch hunt. Hensley was diagnosed with clinical PTSD somewhere around December of 2012, January of 2013. 16 months later, she comes forward and stated that her PTSD was not lesser than that seen in veterans. Now, as a victim of childhood rape who also suffers from PTSD and has had that trivialized by people who don't know how PTSD works, I don't find her statements to be a problem. What I do find to be problematic are your attempts to poison the well on the basis of the targeted harassment by people who believe Hensley doesn't have some sort of twisted right to her PTSD because she didn't gain it by signing up to the American war machine. Moving on, you rolled out literal gaslighting in the exact same fashion that the Catholic Church has been doing for decades, doing everything to undermine the victim's memories. It's true that our memories degrade over time and that we can fabricate elements, but these elements are typically small details, like what a culprit is wearing, not large acts such as sexual harassment and assault. There's also more trivializing here in the statement that this is merely, quote, making someone uncomfortable, end quote. He then falls back on classic whataboutism involving rape, which, Westbrook, you really should keep your mouth shut about things you very clearly don't understand. The permittance and trivializing of sexual harassment is a vital element of rape culture. Therefore, by trivializing it, you are a rape apologist. Then there's the crack about the plural of anecdote is not data. That just misses the mark at such great lengths. Not everything operates on the basis of scientific data. When it comes to social interaction, testimony is valid. Sexual harassment is not some unknown phenomena that hasn't been proven to exist. We know it exists. It doesn't just exist, it is pervasive in our culture. Fact is, you yourself know that testimonies are valid since you attempted to testify against their testimonies on the basis that I'd never seen it, back at the start. Now, to see how sick and twisted what Westbrook is saying really is, apply all these standards to the people who have come forward about Catholic priests who have sexually assaulted them. See how that goes. Also, how the fuck was Rebecca Watson responsible for Gamergate? When I first read this, I asked how the fuck was she responsible for Elevatorgate, as my mind substituted your bullshit with more reasonable bullshit, but still bullshit. But no, you actually say Gamergate. How was she responsible for that in any way? Going back to Elevatorgate, all Rebecca did was tell guys not to make sexual advances when women are trapped in enclosed spaces with them. How the hell was the response of entitled pieces of shit like yourself her responsibility. I get that you're bordering on rape apologists by this point, but even you must see how fucked up that is deep down. Yet the sense of entitlement Westbrook has doesn't just extend to me. One of the things that John shared whilst talking about the ACA elections with Kevin was the way in which Phil Session, an amazing member of the ACA who has been spearheading a lot of community work, he was one of the members Westbrook's gang wanted off the board since he was seemingly sympathetic with what had happened to the trans community. However, Phil's face has almost become synonymous with said community work, and those grilling the rest of the ACA board who had been supportive of the original statement realised this, paused, and asked Phil the following. They asked him whether he would continue to volunteer for the various community programs he does if he was no longer an ACA board member. A group of entitled white men turned to one of the only board members of colour and asked him if he'd continue to offer free labour that helps them look good, even if they strip him of all power and say. Now, I get why Phil stayed. He has resources there that help a lot of people on the ground. But can we consider for a moment the twisted mentality of the people such as Westbrook in asking such a question? Westbrook is not a community builder. He's a parasite. And I think that really sums up a lot of the people involved in all this. They want the benefits of a secular community with none of the support or work. They want to be congratulated for pumpkin-based platitudes as they actively justify abusing marginalised demographics. They want to paint themselves the victim of witch hunts as they literally put people on mock trial as part of a whipping session. And their followers just accept it without the slightest scrutiny, all as a means to undermine accountability, because that's been the real victim here. The virtue which acknowledges the fact that people are responsible for their actions, more so once their mistakes have been corrected by those more knowledgeable on the topic than them. So when Westbrook asks, quote, "Have you ever been labelled a sexist, racist, transphobic, Islamophobic, fascist bigot, and literally Hitler, all while you advocate for the rights of women, immigrants, the LGBT+ community, and Muslims? I feel like my generation never read the story of the little boy who cried wolf." End quote. This is not a genuine question. He is a supporter of transphobia and therefore a transphobe. He's also a borderline rape apologist, which is a little more than a mere sexist. Those are facts demonstrable with sufficient evidence, as has been supplied amply throughout this video. He's also a repeated liar, not merely getting things wrong, but actively, knowingly, and willingly stating falsehoods to try and protect himself and his friends from accountability, never acknowledging said lies when called out with evidence. That's why even after Stephen Woodford has made absolutely clear that he's not giving up his transphobic bigotry, Westbrook continues to hang out with him, because accountability in the secular community is dead. Now, whether he gets away with it, all the lies, the deception, the defensive abuse, everything covered in this video, well, that's up to us. Do you stand for accountability in the secular community, or do you blindly follow Westbrook and, rather ironically, yet not at all unsurprisingly by this point, drink the Koolaid? As always, please check out our other videos. You can also support Essence of Thought via Patreon, and in doing so, help us become ad-free. We'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone who's already given to the channel, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, McGay, Amit Dev Vojny, Erica Ann James, Daniel Martinez, Robert McCallan, Zach Braxton, Caitlin Smart, Atlas5, Jennifer Hiller, and Aidan Desmares. And for myself and Adita, take care now.